This video is kind of hard for me to talk about, but I really feel impressed that it might help somebody. So I want to tell the story, and I also want the story to be out there for my posterity to hear it because a lot of my grandchildren probably don't know the story. I know my younger ones were in here and they were looking at the pictures I had here and they didn't know about it. So, if it can help somebody, I hope they listen to it. And I'm going to tell about how my baby died. He lived 10 hours and it was a full pregnancy. I went over 2 weeks also with him. And so, some people think that a miscarriage is like the baby dying, but it's not. A full pregnancy, full term pregnancy, is way different than having a miscarriage, as is a child that you've had in your home and died is way different than having a baby die in the hospital that you never took home because of the memories that are there. I didn't have anything in my house that he ever went to, so I didn't have to go there and grieve remembering how he used to be there. Um, so I think people need to understand, don't compare your miscarriage to somebody who's lost a full term baby. And don't compare your baby dying to a 4-year old who died because it was way different. Each is grievous, but it's would be horrible if your child, 2 or 3 or 4 years old died. So, um, all right. The date was September 3rd, 1983. And for years and years, I looked back and it was the worst day of my life. Nothing else compared to that day. It was like anything else bad that happened, I didn't cry anymore because nothing was worse as the when my baby died. So just because something else stupid happened, I didn't ever cry because it's like, you don't know what grief is or what heartache is until you lose a baby. Here's a picture of me pregnant to prove that I really was pregnant. Isn't that a beautiful red dress in September? My sister gave it to me, but I don't know. It looks like it's plastic. It fit, it was comfy. I tried to look good even pregnant, but anyway, my whole pregnancy was normal and wonderful. And um, I went to a midwife and I loved her, and she gave me so much more attention than doctors. And I didn't want to go to a doctor. They never had labor pains, they never felt pregnant. So, how can they be a good take care of you? So, I didn't want to go to a man doctor. So, the midwife, my sister had her, and she was wonderful. So, I went to her. I keep looking down because I have notes because I don't want to miss anything. All right. So, pregnancy normal, and I didn't have any problems. We assumed the baby's going to be great. The only thing was, my husband was an alcoholic, and so I wasn't very happy during the whole pregnancy because he kept getting drunk and breaking things, and he was a mean drunk, so it was horrible. And I thought, as soon as the baby's born, I'm going to divorce him. That's how bad it was. But I didn't want to be alone pregnant, so having him was better, I thought, than nothing. So I stayed married to him. Um, so September 3rd, maybe it was the second, I don't remember. I started labor, and it progressed okay. So we went to the midwife's clinic. She had it in part of her house was her clinic. So we went there, and I don't really remember too much about labor because later I learned that the mental and the anguish and the grief far outweighs the pain of labor and delivery. And I've learned so many lessons through this, and this was one lesson. Your mental health is more important than your physical. It can hurt worse than physical pain. Um, so I I'm reading my notes. Okay. Okay, so I was in labor and everything was going good, but I got dilated to 8 and then it kind of like stalled out and nothing was happening. So the midwife said, "All right, let's just all calm down, go to bed and, just relax." Well, later I learned that she does that as a trick because the tension is so high for things to happen that it can have a psyche on the mother, in her labor. So she told us, it was at her house and it was a regular bed and everything. So she said, "Go to bed, let's turn the lights off and just get some sleep." So we did. And then as soon as the lights were off and we were kind of laying there and I was settling and I was still having pains, but all of a sudden I heard a pop. My water broke. And I mean, I was laying in water. I had so much. And my hair even got wet, I remembered. And so my husband ran out to get the midwife and she came in. And like I said, I had been dilated to 8, but by the time she came in there, I was dilated 10. So I went to birth. It was like dilated to 8 to birth in 5 minutes. It went so fast. When the water broke, it just kind of shot him out too. And so then he wasn't breathing and I felt guilty because I thought, "Oh no, he came out too fast and that's why he can't breathe." And I remember she's holding him on her lap and she just kept slapping the bottom of his feet and then she's listening to his heart and I'm laying in bed thinking, just breathe, take a breath. And the time kept going by and I've been looking at my husband and he's over there watching and we're just both looking at each other, "Breathe, baby, breathe." And it wasn't happening. So she got out. She had a nurse there and she got out the oxygen thing. They didn't have an electric, breather thing. So she's with the hand one, pumping air into him and I'm still laying in water and mess. And anyway, it was just, oh, the horrible, just waiting and praying. I was praying, "Please, Heavenly Father, make him breathe, make him breathe." So then she told my husband, "Go get the car ready," because we were at her house, basically. So Foster went and got the car ready, and they whisked him to the hospital, which was probably 15 minutes away. I'm busy right now. I'm recording. Come back later. I didn't put my sign out. Okay, so then they left and left me alone there with this nurse. That nurse just went to sleep. So I called my mother, who was 30 minutes away, and said, "Mom, could you come? The baby's," I told her everything that's happening. So it took her 30 minutes to get there. And the whole time I'm laying there, and I needed sewed up because I ripped and I needed a couple of stitches and I had to go pee. And I was just like, I went and woke the nurse up and said, "Can I take a shower or can I sit in water? Because I have to go pee so bad, but it hurts." I'm sure because I needed a stitch, the pee on it burned so bad. And it was just horrible. And I was alone. And then it was the anguish, is my baby going to live? And it was horrible. And I'm praying the whole time. And finally, my husband called me and he said, "They want you to come here to the hospital. So I'm coming to get you." In the meantime, my mom got there and sat with me until he came. And I remember telling my mom, I kept saying, "I don't want to have another baby. I don't want to go through this again." I kept saying that because something was telling me, "You're going to have another baby. It's okay." But at that point, I didn't want to go through that again and have another baby. But I just kept saying that over and over again. I think my mother thought I was nuts because I just kept saying that. And she'd go, "Honey, you don't have to have another baby. You're fine." But then something would tell me, "You're going to have another one." All right. So Foster came and got me. Oh, wait. I wanted to tell this too. The little baby did make noises. It was like when he was trying to breathe and he didn't cry, but he made, I don't know why I keep thinking it was like little lamb noises because I never heard of a lamb, what noise they make. But it was just little noises. So we knew he wasn't stillborn or dead. He was alive. And he tried to breathe, but he just couldn't. And I felt horrible feeling for me. And later I looked at his feet and he had bruises on his feet where she hit him so hard that he's trying to breathe, and it just broke my heart thinking he was trying to breathe and he couldn't, which I'll tell you later why he couldn't breathe. But at that point, I didn't know. So Foster came and got me, my husband, and we got to the hospital. And here's what I saw. Is the light glaring? He was all hooked up to everything. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. The picture goes this way. He was all hooked up to everything. And he weighed 7'2", so he was a normal sized baby. And his body looked perfect. And I remember looking at him in the bed. That's my arm right here. Whoops, over here. It's my arm coming to see him. And they're telling me, they took my camera from me, and somebody was taking pictures. They did a horrible job. They never did get a picture of him alive, just his face head on. So I was always disappointed. Why didn't they get a good picture of him? It was always just far away in the side of him. So anyway, then they came up and told me, the doctor came up and told me, now he is really drugged right now, and he's not getting oxygen to all his organs, so there's becoming damage to the organs. We don't think, well, at first they thought, before I got there, they thought they were going to whisk him up to Portland, Oregon, and at the good hospital there and do surgery and fix him, whatever was wrong with him. But when I got to the hospital, then they said, no, he can't. He's not going to make it. Even if he was the president of the United States, baby, they couldn't do anything. It was 1983. Nowadays, they could have. So what was wrong with him, which we found out later? No, they told us then. He had a hole in his diaphragm, and his intestines grew up into the lung cavity. So he only had one mini lung, and the other one, there wasn't even a lung. And he, um, you know, as long as he was inside of me and had the placenta and everything, he could survive. But once he was outside of me and had to live on his own, he couldn't breathe and get oxygen into him. Nowadays, you've heard of that surgery they do when you're still pregnant. They do that, and nowadays they put him on a heart lung machine and they do the surgery and repair him nowadays, but they couldn't back then. Plus, he was failing fast, his organs, he wasn't getting oxygen. And that little hospital in that little town did not have this machine. They had to air flight a machine over to that hospital. So I'm sure that delay and everything didn't help him. And I did not want an invalid child that couldn't live normal. And so if he couldn't be a normal baby and have to be hooked up to something and not play like a little boy and everything, then I wasn't going to fight and pray that he would live. And maybe some people don't understand that, but that's how I felt because I loved him so much. And back then they didn't do ultrasounds. Now they do ultrasounds and can detect problems like this. But back then we didn't have ultrasounds first. Now, the story I'm going to tell now is what I went through and what I personally felt. And it might not be what you agree, and you might think, oh, that's hocus pocus, or oh, that's, you're a crazy lady, or whatever. But I can testify to you that this is true to me, and it is what happened to me in my memories and in my living this experience. And if you had a baby die, maybe you have an experience like this. So when I got there to see him, they told me he isn't going to listen to you or hear you because he's on morphine and he is out of it. He's not, we don't want him to feel pain. And so we've given him drugs. They shaved his head right here to hook him up to things. And so they said he's on morphine bad, a lot. All right. So I said, okay, so I walked up to him and I said, can I touch him? Which was stupid. Of course I could touch him. And here I am touching his little hand. And as soon as I touched his hand, his eyes opened. He looked right at me. And At the time, I didn't know this is possible until I've studied and read, and I learned later that it's true that a spirit can communicate with another spirit without words. And he looked right at me as I looked at him, and his spirit told my spirit, this is the way it's supposed to be. Everything is going to be okay. And then he closed his eyes and he never opened them again. So I'm watching him and looking at him, and the love, and my arms ached, my heart. And I told the midwife, I just want to hold him while he's alive still. And she said, okay, you can. So they unhooked him from the machines and wrapped him up in this blanket and gave him to me. And I sat and held him. And she kept coming over with her stethoscope, listening to his heart, probably because she wanted to know at a time of death that his heart stopped. And so someone else was taking the pictures. And here I am. And he has passed by now. You could tell because his color changed. And I was telling my little grandson, he wanted to know, now, was he alive in this picture or was he dead? And I wanted to show you the difference because this is another thing I learned. When the baby's alive, look at his neck. He had a neck. And when he died, his little, you know, he's dead, but spirit left his body and he's completely limp. And he no longer had a neck. He was just limp and the color went out of him. And my husband, he couldn't take it. He left. So I was alone with him. So here I am. I didn't want to leave him. And back then they didn't do what they do nowadays. They give you a room and they let you spend time with them and you can dress them, and um, sometimes they spend all night with them. But back then they didn't let you. And so I unwrapped him and looked at his feet, and that's when I found he had bruises on the bottom of his feet because they were trying to get him to breathe and he couldn't. And that breaks my heart that, you know, he tried so hard to breathe, but he didn't have a diaphragm. Okay, so I held him for a long time. And, I always say there's something funny in everything. Well, and this might seem morbid to some people, but like I say, this is my experience. Well, I've had four boys ahead of time. The oldest one, I don't know, was 7 or something. And I had, the youngest one was probably 7, 5, 4, 3, I don't know, something like that. Anyway, so all my boys, I try to be nice and gentle, but I was always kind of rough with them. Just a minute, I want to blow my nose so I don't sound. I would edit that out. Sorry, that's disgusting, but God made our bodies to when we cry, we have snot. Sorry. All right. I don't cry too much anymore because, it's been 40 years. All right. So here's the funny part. Don't think I'm horrible. Anyway, with my other little boys, they kind of learned that their mom was kind of not always the gentlest. And every time I would have them on my, they're little like 10, 11 months old, a year old. And every time I had them on my shoulder and we'd get in the car, I would always kind of bump their heads, and they would always, they learned how to duck when I'm putting them in their car seat or whatever, in the back seat, because I didn't mean to, but, you know, I would walk with them by a wall and their head would hit them. None of them got retarded or anything from it. They never had a bruise or anything, but they always just learned to duck their head. So here, my little baby, I wanted to hold him in every way I could. So I put him up on my shoulder to, rock him like that. Well, as I put him up there, of course, he was dead. His spirit was gone. And here his head clunked on my shoulder. And then I just started a little chuckle saying, I even bumped his head. So that was the only thing I laughed at. So my husband, they finally said, okay, they're trying to get rid of us probably. We can wrap it up now, and we'll take him, and the mortician will come, and the midwife took him, and she's totally holding him and cuddling him, to take him away. And I don't know how he ever got there. So my husband and I then had to go home. Well, one regret I have is we didn't know he was going to die at this point, but I wish I would have had someone bring my four little boys to see him, because ever since, in the months that passed, they wish they would have seen him. And I called the mortician a few days after and said, could I bring my boys to come see their little brother? He said, oh, no, it isn't like a Gerber baby that they can look at and adore. No, you don't want to. So I just went by what he said. But I know my one son, Trevor, who has 7 children, I think it hit him the hardest. And he always wanted to, he regretted it. He didn't, I just wanted to see him. So nowadays they do let the family and children come and see, which I'm glad they do that now. But I don't have those are like my pictures, not very good pictures. And it was filmed back then. So, you only had 12, 24 pictures or something. So I wish I would have had more pictures. I wish I would have had, I'm sure his footprints are probably on the certificate. But why didn't they cut a little piece of hair to give me, nowadays they do so much, but they didn't back then. So I don't have anything. I do have this blanket he was wrapped in. It was a yellow blanket underneath that blue one. And I do have that blanket in my keepsake, but it doesn't help you. And, just going to visit his grave doesn't help me, because I know he's not there. That's just his body. His spirit is in heaven, with my family that has died and with people who haven't been born yet. So he's okay. All right. So I always had planned when we get back to the house, and then I told my husband, you come around and open the door and take the baby in, and then I'll walk in. But here we drove home empty handed. I remember going to the grocery store, and the lady who always saw me, oh, you had your baby, what'd you have? And then I had to say, he died, the baby died. And then she felt horrible. And, you have to go through things like that. And my boys were all at my mom's, and bless the heart of everyone, they took food, but they took it to my mother's house because that's where my boys were. And I remember being home at my house and just had a baby, and I was hungry. And they didn't bring food to me. So make a note of that. I have. Make sure that the birth mother has some food, not just the family somewhere else. And I remember sitting, I have to go to my next page of my notes. Okay. And then I remember being home and doing the dishes. And the boys were gone, and I was alone. My husband left. I was all home alone. And then it just hit me. He wasn't inside me anymore. And he wasn't here. He was nowhere. And that was really a hard day. And I called my mom and I said, I want my boys to come home because I needed them. So she brought him home to me, and I hugged him. And from that time, I realized my baby's okay. His spirit is with Heavenly Father, and he has loved ones around him, and he's okay. But the boys that I have here, they need me, and they are still growing, and they need me. So I just devoted my whole life to them and concentrated on them. And that's what helped me the most, is hugging them and having them. And then I remember people, they were nice, trying to be nice, but they would bring me flowers. Then I sat there and watched the flowers die. I will never take flowers to anybody who has lost someone, because you sit there and watch the flowers die. Take a plant, take food, take a memory of something, a picture or something that they can hang on the wall, a picture of Christ or something. But do not take flowers. It's a nice thought, but I always said the florists are there, and this is naughty because my husband's brother and wife were florists. I said, the florists are there praying. I wish we need money. I hope somebody dies so we can make flowers, go to the funeral, and make some money. Then we're to the funeral home. Oh, we need money. I wish someone would die. I always think that. So I will not buy, even when my kids went to prom and stuff, I made the bouquet and the boutonniere and everything because I reckon those florists are probably just waiting for the prom and the people dying and stuff so they can make money. You can think what you want. And if you're a mortician, you're making money because my dad always said there's two things in life that never will end: death and taxes. True. You're always going to have to pay your taxes, and someone's always going to die, and funerals are a racket, right? $10,000. I told my husband, how about if you just pour some cement in the ground and write on it, once she was alive, now she's dead. And that can be my headstone. And then just give me the $3,000 so I can spend it on the living. I always think money should be spent on the living, not the dead. When you're dead, you don't care. That's just my thought. I know you all think different. My husband, oh no, you got to have a big funeral and you should see his headstone. He has it up there already. Huge, diamond shaped. His picture's already on. All I have to do is add the death date. Sick. All right. Um. Okay. I told that. Oh, and then the other thing, we got the bill. And the midwife told me, now you are going to get the bill for all of this, even though you don't have a baby. That was true. But then we found out, well, the plot, it was just had to be a half plot because it was a baby. So it didn't have to be a whole plot of ground. So a half plot, and back then it was only $55. So we could afford that. Then the hospital bill came in and everything, and I don't remember how much it was, but there was a fund that poor people could apply for to have them help pay for your hospital bill. And we qualified, so we didn't have that hospital bill, although we did have to pay for the delivery. All right, so then, see if I'm in the right place. I don't want to miss anything because I don't want to record this again and have to go crying through it again. I don't cry now for years because, you know, you don't get over it ever, but you get used to it. And so, um, you stop crying. All right. So then my arms ached for a baby, and I didn't want to divorce my husband then because I needed him. And then he got really good and treated me well. He bought me a Bernina sewing machine. He said, I know my dead baby would want his mother to have the best sewing machine ever. And he treated me really good. He quit drinking because we both wanted to have another baby. So we both wanted to be healthy. But here's another thing I found out: he'd smoked while I was pregnant around me. And the midwife told him later, she said, Angela's placenta looked like she had been a 2-pack a day smoker. I didn't find that out till years later. And then he told me, but I know it was because he felt guilty that maybe that's why the baby's lungs didn't develop. But it wasn't, because they don't know why this happens, but that's not why. But anyway, we both got really healthy and everything, and the midwife said wait 6 months before you try to get pregnant again, which we did. 6 months later I was pregnant, but I ignored it. I always felt that I gave a baby to God and now he would give one to me. And so I didn't go to the midwife till I was 6 months pregnant because I didn't want her, because she had told me, next time you're pregnant, we'll do an ultrasound. We'll make sure everything's okay. Well, if the ultrasound was something was wrong, I don't believe in abortion. So didn't even want to know if anything was wrong because I was not going to have an abortion. And I just said, no, God is going to take care of me. I gave one to him and he's going to give one to me. And so I ignored it. Was the best pregnancy I ever had. All my other pregnancies, I counted down the calendar, the days, what the baby's growth was, how big he was, and I only have this much left. And this time I ignored it all, and it went by so fast. And the other thing is, I realized that my dead baby, the only time he was alive was when I was 9 months pregnant. So this time I didn't complain one bit. When the baby kicked me, I just said, let this baby live how she will. I didn't know what it was. How it will and how it may, because I'm not going to complain one bit because I complained, and that was the only time my little baby had been alive. So I didn't care. I would sacrifice anything, and I didn't care what the baby was if I just wanted to be healthy and live. And everybody goes, because I had the 5 boys, didn't you want a girl? I didn't care. I just want the baby to live. That's the most important thing. And so I had her. She was a girl, my first girl, and everyone just stared at me. Oh, I can't wait to see you with a girl. It didn't matter. It was my baby and it was alive, and that's all I cared about. Although I did enjoy my daughter. She was born December 9th, and I always said it was my little doll I got for Christmas, and all I wanted for my birthday on the 21st was clothes for her, and oh, she was my reward in heaven. And so all the years, I know my new baby, I loved it, and it healed my aching arms. And then I had another baby also, which I've made a recording of. I had her in the car. So I said I had every baby every way you can. I had natural. I had back then they called it a coddle, but it's like an epidural. Anyway, I've had except I never had a C-section. But anyway, watch my video of the baby born in the car and subscribe to me because this is hard telling this story, but I want to help somebody. But I'm not done yet, so don't stop. All right, so then my little daughter was perfect, and I stopped crying so much. I know my husband afterwards, I was crying all the time, and finally he got mad at me and said, "Stop crying." And it was kind of good he did say that because I thought, suck it up. Yeah, people don't want to see you crying and they don't want to hear about your whining. So I sucked it up. And then that's when I learned I'll just devote my time to my children. So for years and years, I remember September 3rd, every year it came around, that was the worst day of my life. And a few years ago, it just dawned on me because I believe in a hereafter. I believe I'll see him again. It occurred to me, you know what? It was the worst day of my life, but it was the best day of his life he ever had because he got to return to Heavenly Father. That day, he didn't have to live in this world. And we all know what this world is like, struggles and strife and problems. And, it's not always a beautiful life. It's hard. And nowadays, the way the earth is so hard. Well, he didn't have to live through that. He got to die and return to Heavenly Father. All he needed to do was come to this earth to get a body so that he could get resurrected someday and live for eternity. And it was the best day of his life. And I know he thanked me for my sacrifice. And I think we agreed to it in our previous mortal life that I would do that for him. And he would do this for me and be my guardian angel for our whole life. And so now I know that he will be resurrected like we all will. And we will live with him forever. And I always felt when he communicated with me, spirit to spirit, that his spirit was older than me and that he was guiding me through that and through my life. And when my mother was dying, I told her, now when you get to the other side and you see my little baby, will you tell him that I'm nice and that I loved him and stuff? And she said, he already knows that. So She's with him now, and I know that they're best friends. So, in ending, I think back about when he did communicate and open his eyes and communicate with me. And I think back at that, and he said to me, everything's going to be okay. This was the plan. And he was right. My life was okay. I had two more children, his sisters that were wonderful. And I'm married to a man now that loves me and takes care of me. And I have a good life. And my children have all turned out and love me. And my posterity is my most important thing in my life. So that's the end of my story and what I learned from my little baby. And I just want to say one more thing. I hear these other stories, there's so many of them on YouTube about their babies being born dead. What do they call it? An angel? No, no, they call it a, I don't know. I can't remember. They call it this, they're stillborn babies. But here they'll be holding their little dead baby and they're smiling so much, like a happy family. Look at my face. I couldn't no more have smiled holding my dead baby than I don't understand how they do that. It's not a happy moment. I know it has to be a fake smile. We're not supposed to judge how other people react in circumstances and stuff, but there's not one picture of me or my husband smiling and holding him because we were grieving. And maybe if you spent the night with him, I got to hang up here so I can go blow my nose. Anyway, I didn't smile until my next baby was born. And when people say they lost, their baby died, the only way to properly heal is to have another one and your arms will not ache anymore. Okay, that's my story. Thanks, everybody, for supporting me and listening. And I think my next video is going to tell you why I do these YouTubes. And it's not going to be what anybody thinks, but I really feel the impression that I need to let everyone know why. People have different reasons why they do the YouTubes, and I want to tell everybody why I'm doing them. Okay, thanks. Bye.